He's dead now, not because of her. Yeah, he ended up with a woman that actually the reason that he is dead is because the woman that he ended up with after my mom at some point, she ran him over or something like that.
I like how you had to clarify though that your mom didn't kill him.
Well,
He's dead now.
I mean,
not because of my mom. Welcome to Raw Recovery. I'm Dylan.
I'm Chris.
And this is our garage. I promise, as you can see, it's actually our garage. One day we'll make it fancy and we'll have a green screen and it won't look like our garage anymore, but right now, that's exactly what it is. And that reminds me, she is sick and I am also in the beginning stages of being sick. So a little bit less listful than normal. However, we're going to do it anyway because we've been waiting long enough to start this. We are both recovering addicts of different things. In the first episode, which is what this is, I wanted to give Chris, by the way, Chris is my wife, not just a random girl.
Was it first?
Well, she wasn't. Well, not really. We did meet in middle school and then lost touch.
Didn't like me in middle school.
And I didn't like her in middle school. Because
I didn't like you when we got older and you tried to hit me.
Which is also true. Anyway, we'll get into all that over time. But this episode, I wanted to give an intro to who we are. So this episode is going to be Chris's addiction story. And we'll do the recovery story after that. It'll be another episode. That'll be episode 2. Then it's my turn to go. Mine's a lot less fancy.
I don't know if that's the word that you'd use. But...
Well, you know what I mean. Hers is more
bad,
more movie-like.
Hers
epic. Yeah, you got to talk louder than that.
I was feeling epic. Vampire Diaries.
There you go. Okay. So anyway, without further ado, let's start. So you start at the beginning. What was your life like, I guess, in a nutshell, before the addiction started? Normal childhood, traumatic childhood, what was your upbringing like?
My childhood, I don't know, some people say it's traumatic and stuff like that, but now since being a parent, I realize it was just my mom beating my tail like I deserved because I was a little snot brain. But I did grow.
Brat.
Yes, I was a horrible brat. But
not much has changed.
I'm better, okay? But I lived with my mom. She had, she was married a few different times. My dad, I remember he was around a little bit. The last time that I saw him as a kid, though, was in like 3rd grade. I got home off the bus and he was sitting there at his truck fiddling around with it. I remember that very specifically. And then he told me that he was leaving to go back to Florida or something. And then I never saw him again until I was 18. So that's what, 3rd grade to 18.
Is that your biological dad?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's 13 to 8, or 3rd grade to 18, however long that is. It's like over 10 years, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know how old that is.
But I had, she had a boyfriend when I was growing up. His name was Johnny Ray. He was a great guy. Now he's not. Well, he's still a great guy. He just has a lot of his demons that he does.
Yeah.
But he was, my dad's best friend, ironically. But he was the closest thing to a dad I had my whole life. And then she married this other man. He was a really older man, but he had a lot of money. And I think a lot of that went into why she actually married him. He's dead now, not because of her. Yeah, he ended up with a woman that... Actually, the reason that he is dead is because the woman that he ended up with after my mom at some point, she ran him over or something like that.
I like how you had to clarify, though, that your mom didn't kill him.
Well,
He's dead now.
I mean,
not because of my mom.
She's known to, get after them men sometimes. Like, I mean, I'm not going to tell all of her business out here because she might get mad if she ever sees this. But, So, But then she ended up with Jeff, who was my stepdad most of my life. He was around, I think they were already together the last time that I saw my dad. Ironically, he was actually friends with my dad too. But when he saw how crappy of a dad my dad was, he, chopped that up. But they were together until I was 16, 17, something like that. And then that was kind of when things, started getting worse with my mom because I was, like I said, I was a brat. And it got to the point where I would actually physically fight her back. And I used to think, oh, she abused me, blah, blah, blah. No. Now that I have Lily and I have her whenever she wants to fight me back, I can see why my mom would put me in my place. So I don't really know if it was I guess the only thing traumatic would be my dad. I let him come back around when I was 18. I was given that chance because I found out that he had been, sorry, there's something in my eye. He had been in Alabama my entire life. And apparently my family was keeping it hidden. And he was living in a camper across the street at my grandfather's property. And it was either my 18th or 19th birthday. And I found out he was there. And they were like, you can either, tell him to kick rocks or make him leave, or you can let him come around you. I was like, okay, well, I'll give him a chance. And I did. And he, he was good for a little bit, but then, I told him, I said, you can't choose another woman over me again. You can't, start drinking again. Gave him all these things. He did all of those things.
So. Was your biological dad, was he, I already know all this stuff, by the way. I'm asking for y'all's benefit. Was he abusive at all, or was he just, I guess, what you'd call a deadbeat?
He was just a deadbeat. Because take that back. Later on, during my addiction, he could be, no, I won't say during my addiction. Later on, some during it, and then a lot after it, and even in the middle, when I let him come back around when I was 18, 19, and I don't even remember what caused him to flip out. Half the time it was because he was mad that my mom wouldn't have anything to do with him for whatever reason. And, he would say that I was a whore just like my mom. I was this, I was that. And I'm like, A, you don't even know anything about me. B, you're just being a douchehole because you're mad. So I would say he's definitely verbally abusive. During his marriage with my mom, I think he may have tried to be abusive, but she didn't put up with it.
Yeah.
I heard a story that my grandfather, he played a prank on them and did his voice like a woman and called and left a voicemail. That was back when they had, the regular phones with the cords. Left a voicemail at their house.
Phone. Huh? The ye olde phone.
Left a voicemail on their answering machine at the house. Sounding like a woman talking about, oh, I enjoyed last night, blah, 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 blah. My mom gets to it. And she takes the cord and chokes the life out of him and tries to kill him. So he goes back to see my grandpa. My grandpa the next day, he goes, I don't know what got into her last night. Some crazy woman called and left a voicemail, and Angie just started going nuts. She tried to kill me. And then he just starts busting out laughing.
Who busts out laughing?
My grandfather did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he goes,
because you're a moron.
Yeah, he was like, Larry, that wasn't no girl, that was me. So.
Oh, your Pawpaw did that.
Yeah, Pawpaw called and left the voicemail.
I missed that little detail.
Yeah, Pawpaw called and left the voicemail pretending to be a woman. And Mama heard the voicemail and assumed that it was a woman. So then she took the cord and she dragged him down there. I don't know if she dragged him out the stairs with it, what she did, but she dragged him with the cord and tried to kill him. And I want to say there was people there. And they just stood there and just let it happen. They're just like, well, I guess he shouldn't have called the woman.
Well, probably. Yeah. So you had I guess, it kind of harsh to say revolving door of stepdads. But you kind of did.
Yeah, once it got into third grade, though, it was, Jeff was very steady.
Yeah. Jeff was the one that married us.
Yeah. Gave
And
us away. Or gave me
or
away.
yeah, gave you away. Sorry, he didn't.
Wadley
Mark
married us.
Wadley married us.
We need
just
to have him on here, by the way, at
from
some
the
point.
from the Love Lady Center, which is the more coughs, which is the rehab that Chris went to. So anyway, after you got, so kind of skip ahead a little bit, to when, I guess, what you would consider the trigger of the addiction problems
Well,
was.
I honestly don't know what the actual trigger was. I started drinking when I was 18 and was, hanging out at places I didn't need to be hanging out with people I didn't need to be hanging out with. Had a lot of things happen to me while I was drinking like that I'm not going to get into. But, it was just a very hard time. And then I ended up at my oldest brother's house, and he knew the kind of path that I was going down, and he had me go stay with him for a little bit. And then I eventually ended up back at my mom's, and I started working at this assisted living place. And I met this woman there that was wanting me to try to help find her son a girlfriend, because he had just had, a bad breakup. It was a whole bunch of the things going on. And I ended up giving his phone number to one of my friends. And I can't remember what happened. They didn't connect for some reason. I don't remember why. And me and him ended up talking for some reason. And we just started getting where we were talking all the time. And he came and met me at work. And we went on his motorcycle, went to go get lunch or dinner, whatever you call it. Was evening shift at a thing. So it's technically lunch, but it's actually dinner, I guess. But
That'd
anyways,
be dinner.
Yeah. But they call it a lunch, so that's what makes it very confusing. Anyways.
Work term.
So we went, and then he ended up having to come back because, surprise, I locked my keys in my car. I do that a lot.
Yeah.
So he came back up there, and, we hit it off and stuff, and I ended up going afterwards that he had a lot of people that worked there that was actually related to him. He had multiple cousins, like second cousins, aunts. His mom worked there. And one of the aunts, she actually lived up the road. So she was like, she knew that I was hanging out with him, and I wanted to go over there that night. So she let me follow her to the house. She just told me, just keep going, after she turned into her place. Which, it's a good thing that my lights worked good, because there was a sinkhole in the middle of the road. And had I not been paying attention, she didn't say anything. I just saw her turn around because she was going into the yard. And turns out, if I hadn't turned when she did, I would have went straight into that hole. There's a big giant hole in the middle of the thing. But anyways.
Well, maybe
what?
Maybe a omen.
Yeah. So, but I ended up going there and ended up spending the night and stuff, and nothing happened. Just hung out and stuff, and I ended up kind of liking him. And I'm one of those people, whenever I end up meeting somebody, I don't know how to be away from them, as you know. I just go balls to the walls with it, like, hey, I don't want to be away from you. And I think it has something to do with my, what is it called? My abandonment issues, maybe. I don't know.
Your dad leaving you and all of that, and then getting.
I met his grandma the next day, and she actually was the first time. Scratch that. I met her that night because he lived in a camper, and it didn't have bathroom or anything like that. So we had to walk to his grandma's house, and I had to go pee. So I go in there, and she was one of those, holiness ladies, had the long, long hair, wore the skirts, whole 9 yards. And I go in there to use bathroom, and I guess we woke her up. And all of a sudden, in the dark, I see this woman standing there, and I just see the silhouette of her, and I just see long hair, and then the outline of a skirt looking like a dang nun in front of me. And I jumped. I was like, what the heck? And I can't remember if she said anything to us. But the next day, I was back over there. And she looks at me. She goes, so when y'all going to get married? I said, we're not even dating. I just met him yesterday. And she's like, well, the only way that y'all can sleep in this house over here is if y'all are married. Y'all ain't going to be sleeping in the same. Y'all can do whatever y'all want out in that camper, but you ain't going to be up in here sleeping together.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, I ended up liking him. And, it was a good relationship, but then it quickly became toxic. I realized that he had a lot of issues. And I'm not going to say too much about his stuff just in case his family sees this, because I don't want them thinking I'm bad-mouthing him, any of that. So,
well, I mean, people have issues.
Yeah.
You have issues. I have issues. You have issues. Everybody's got issues. Everybody has problems. Everybody has traumas and different things like that. I mean, it's not like it's bad-mouthing somebody to say they have issues.
Well, there's just certain things that I don't know if their family knows, so I'm just going to.
I mean, I guess it could be considered about if you're like, you have issues.
Yeah.
That is, but like everybody has problems. Anyway.
He had depression, obviously. And there would be times when he would drink and he would become suicidal. He would, he would say things that didn't really make sense. This is one thing that his grandma knows. There was one time that he locked me in the camper and started a fire inside of a trash can and locked me up in there. The only reason I knew that he wasn't going to let me die in there was because his dog was in there. And then his grandma could hear me screaming all the way up at her house, and she came banging on the door. John David, you let her up out of there. Don't you be trying to hurt her.
How far into the relationship was the fire incident?
About a couple of months. Our first, we got engaged within a month of dating.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I thought we were fast. 6 months.
He was 6 months when, well, I'm not going to spoil it for him.
Yeah.
But, so, I started seeing those red flags, and then there was a night when he genuinely was going to try to kill himself, and I had to get the gun away from him, and it was just a whole big thing. I still have issues now if Dylan is asleep. Like, if he goes into another room, I can't sleep unless he's back in the room. Because even though I know that he's not going to do it, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if he hurts himself? What if he kills himself? What if he never comes back in here? So I still deal with issues with that. So if we're ever mad at each other, I make him pretend to love me and make him come back to bed. I actually said that to him last night, pretend that you love me. And he did. But he wouldn't come around at first and give me my kiss and pretend they loved me. But eventually he did. But so, we started having all that kind of stuff. And then I started realizing that there was drugs in the mix, but I didn't know him specifically. There was a neighbor that was doing the stuff. It was, back then they called it shake and bake. It was a different form of meth than what they do now. That was the stuff they did when you make it in your house with the lab and the Sudafed and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, they change it to just doing what you call ice, which is you can actually put it inside of the ground and it plants. I don't know, but it can end up going off too. If you leave it in there for too long, it can blow up too. But this was before all that stuff. This was the shake and bake stuff. And, it turned out that there was times that he had my car and I would try to go to work and I didn't have any gas. Well, so I started trying to figure out ways to be able to have gas. So I was like, actually, I don't know if I can talk about this without getting in trouble. Well, I guess it don't matter. I would sign for boxes, Sudafed boxes. And that's how I would be able to have money to be able to get to work, because he would use up all my gas. And
how does signing for boxes make you money?
Because you can only get so many boxes of Sudafed per so many days. Now I don't know if it's still like that, but so like if you're trying to make meth, you have to sign for those boxes.
So when they ran out of chances to sign for it, they would pay you to sign for
Right.
it so they could get it and make their
Right.
meth. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, it wasn't for them to make it. It was for them to take it to their meth makers.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So I was getting that. I don't remember who if I was getting the money from the person that was getting the meth or who it was that was paying me. But
Now at this point, you're not doing anything.
no, I don't know anything about it. I'm only 18 years old at this point. I don't know anything about anything. And I start, I always heard things that John was doing meth, but I never really saw it. So I eventually told him, and this is the part that goes into I don't know how much his family knows.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say too much, but I eventually figured it out. There was a possibility, and I handled it in a certain type of way that I wish that I wouldn't have handled it. I wish that I would have just left and not said anything about it. But here we are. And actually, you know what? I'm just going to say it. Found out he was doing it or suspected it, and I told him that I wanted to see him do it in front of me because I wanted to see how differently he acted.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't act any different. Back then, I didn't do drugs. So I didn't know when you're actually doing it for so long, you don't show any difference.
Yeah, you start being able to.
Yeah.
What do they call that crap? When you can
I know what you're trying to
still
say
go
back
through
here.
life even when you're drunk or high. Functioning.
Yes.
Thank you. Functioning at it. Yeah.
So then, that was him smoking it. So then I said, all right, well, he acted the same. I said, so I want to see you snort it. And he snorted it. Still acted the same. I still didn't know any difference. So then the night before he died, I told him, I said, because he went to go do it in front of me. And I said, hey, I'm not okay with you doing it. He said, well, you were fine that other time. I said, yeah, because I wanted to see how differently you acted. I said, I don't want you doing it, though. I don't like it. And he tells me, it's okay. It's the last time I'll ever do it. And then, I can't remember if it was that day or the next day. No, it was earlier that day. He was having one of his episodes and was threatening to kill himself. And I was just fed up at this point because it'd been months and months, just the New Year's before that. I literally spent my New Year's with him swallowing a bullet. He was threatening to kill himself, and he took the bullet and he actually swallowed it.
What was he trying to prove with that?
I don't even remember. And so, I was just done. I was tired of the threatening. I was tired of the, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I was like, you know what? Just do it. And please don't leave no hate comments on this. I know I shouldn't have said that. But, when you deal with the trauma of that for so long and someone threatening to do it, you're going to eventually start getting upset.
Snap.
Yeah. So he pulls out the shotgun, puts it up to his head, and he pulls the trigger. Well, nothing happened. So then he starts crying. And, I go over and I comfort him. And I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah. Well, I worked with his mom the next day. And around this time, his grandpa was in the hospital too. Told his mom what happened. We ended up at the hospital to visit. And he was upset because the night before at work, something happened. I can't remember if it was gas or it was something with my tires. No, my tire blew on the way there. And he didn't answer the phone when I needed help. So a guy that I worked with, he offered to give me a ride home. So when we were at the hospital, John was still all mad about that. He was mad that I let another guy bring me home. He didn't trust me, that I wasn't doing anything, just the whole 9 yards. So at the hospital, we ended up in an argument, and he took off walking. He left. He went walking up Governors. If anybody lives in Huntsville, you know where that is by the hospital. He went walking up Governors, and his grandma went after him and ended up taking him home. My cell phone was missing at this point. My money was so bad that I couldn't pay my phone bill. My phone was turned off. It had been missing for days. I still to this day don't even know what happened to it. And so I ended up going back to the house. His grandma's taking him there, and then his mom's there. Well, I see her coming out of the house with all the guns, and he's chasing after her, like, what are you doing? And it was a big whole ordeal, and we got into a fight after she left, made up, and he starts messing around with a rope. And he starts saying, or I said to him, I was being smart aleck again. I said, so what are you going to do now that you ain't got any guns? You going to go try to hang yourself? And he says, thanks for the idea. I didn't even think about that. And he climbs up in the tree and he starts messing with stuff. And he jumps out, and I run over and I try to help him. And he had the link so long that, and it was tied around his body too. It was around his neck and it was around the rest of his body. And, it untied and he fell down to the ground. And then he starts crying, and I helped, get a lighter, and I burned it off. Went back in the house, and we made up. And then somehow it gets back on the subject about that guy again. And I told him, I said, I'm not in the wrong for him helping me. Like, I did not do anything wrong. I needed a way home. He helped me. And he was like, well, if you're not in the wrong for that, then I'm not in the wrong for this. And he went running into the other end of the house, put some different clothes on, and it was another big giant fight. He starts taking my stuff, throwing it out. I started being petty, throwing it out with him, whole 9 yards. And then I finally was just like, you know what? I just want to go. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to leave. Because prior to this, there was other fights going where I went and stayed at my mom's. Like, I was just done. I didn't want to deal with this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells me that I couldn't go anywhere until I cleaned up my mess. And I was like, okay, whatever. Well, he's notorious for when he gets mad about something and he storms through the house and he's leaving. He goes out to his camper. I say he does like it's present tense. He was notorious for doing that and going out to his camper and blaring the music. And I start realizing I don't hear the music. Like, that's odd. And then I go out on the porch. He's back up in the tree. And I start saying, what are you doing? Why are you up there? And he starts telling me to go back in the house, saying I don't want to, I'm not going to want to see what he's doing. And I was like, no, like, tell me, what are you doing? And then he just jumps. And then I'm like in shock. So I take off running. And I don't even know how I ended up in the tree, but I climbed up in that tree and I got on the same limb that he was standing on, and I tried to lift his body up and take slack off of the rope on his throat. And that didn't help. So then I dropped it, went in the house. There's no knives in the house. My phone was missing. The only phone that was in there was a cord phone. Well, in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to leave him there with him dying and him be like, oh, she just left me. So I went back up in the tree, I think, and I tried again. I couldn't get him out. And then I took off running to go get somebody. I went across the street and I got this woman and told her what was going on. And then I went down the road, which is probably about a half a mile down the road. Is how far I ran. And I got his uncle. And then we hopped in the truck and went back up there. And around that point, that girl was there and she had a knife and it was just shaking. And she's on the phone crying, hysterical. And the EMT showed up. His uncle got him out of the tree. And at that point, his ankle was purple, blue, green, the colors that your skin goes when you're dead. And they tried to revive him, and then he ended up flatlining. And, I stayed there for a little while, but then a whole bunch of families showed up. And at this point, it's like 2 or 3 hours in, and I realized I haven't told anybody. Like, none of my family knew. They were all like an hour away. So then I couldn't get anybody on the phone because I didn't have my phone. And I called with someone else's phone and they didn't answer. So then I had to just send a message on Facebook being like, John killed himself tonight. And they're like calling, like, what are you talking about? And they came and picked me up. Because they took me over, the family member took me over there because she told me they were going to be moving the sheet that they put up when someone's dead. They were going to be moving the sheet away from them. And she said that there was going to be a lot of emotion. And I had already had, his mom asking stuff, his sister, his grandma, like, so they knew that it was going to get very emotional for everybody. So they told me it's better for me to just go ahead and, leave. So I did. Then I My brother picked me up, my mom's boyfriend at the time, and my brother's best friend, who's now dead. It was Ian, came and picked me up.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, I grieved for a little bit. Like I stayed up till 3 a.m. every day because that's the witching hour, thinking that it made me feel closer to him. I wouldn't sleep in the bed at my mom's house because that was the last place that we were ever at together, was in that room, in that bed. So I put the two couches together and I just slept for months on the couch. My way of dealing with things was just moving on. Just don't think about it. Just hop on to somebody else. So I'll be honest, I had a couple little slutty moments because it was my way of grieving. And I got a lot of flack from that, from his family being like, she's not thinking about him. She's not grieving. Look at her. She's just, going and doing this, doing that while we're over here grieving him. And nobody realized how I was grieving, that was how I dealt with it, that I thought about him. I still, 12 years later, think about him almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
And his family never thought about that. They just thought, oh, she's just moving on. So
we still go up to his gravesite.
Yeah, I just went this year
anniversary.
with Christine. She took me this year.
The anniversary of his death, yeah.
Yep. Which is 4 days before my birthday, by the way.
Or is it his birthday that we go up there?
No, it's his. Well, it's whichever one that I think about it and I want to go up there.
Oh, okay.
This year I went for the death. And the death is he did this 4 days before my
birthday.
19th birthday, yeah. So that's how I dealt with things. And, I'm not going to go into detail about all that stuff, but I started drinking again. And then I met my oldest daughter's dad. And I got pregnant within the first month of us hanging out. We weren't even dating yet, I don't think. And we both came from broken homes, so we're like, we want to make this work. And I'm not going to badmouth him. He's a great guy. We just did not click. We were both young and stupid. We both did horrible things to one another, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And during, while we were together, obviously I wasn't drinking or any of that because I was pregnant. And then afterwards, I had postpartum really bad. And a lot of that was too because her birthday is 8 days after he killed himself. So he died on the 10th. My birthday was the 14th. And then I had Lily the 18th. And it was a year after he died. And I got a lot of stuff from his family about that too. And so I was dealing with all of that. I had a lot of stuff going on. Me and her dad weren't getting along. And we tried to make it work, but we eventually decided to split around our 1-year wedding anniversary. And that was when it really just went, sure. And I started drinking again. I was going out all the time. I started working at the bar. And then I eventually started hanging out with people that were doing other stuff. And I started doing Xanax. And there was a night, when you do Xanax, you black out. And there was a night that I blacked out and I did meth for the first time. I didn't remember it until I started coming to, and I couldn't even sleep because, I'm high as a kite. And I think I ended up at a strip club at some point during all that. Don't know why. Don't know which one it was. And I also got a puppy. My cousin dropped a puppy off to me, and I took it to a gas station with me in my pocket. Eventually, that dog, somebody took the dog from me because I was so out of it when I got that dog that I didn't even remember that I had the dog. And my guy friend at the time, he told me later, he said, yeah, by the way, I took that dog. He said, my mom owns a shelter type thing, and he needed to go there. I said, I didn't even know I had a dog. So, don't judge me for that neither. It was a bad time in my life. So, I was doing all that stuff, and then some of my family saw the path that I was going down, and they had me. It was actually, oddly enough, my oldest brother, the one that did that last time. He came and did it this time. And I got to get a sip of this. Because we've also dealt with a lot of addiction stuff with my other brother, who's now passed away. So our family is very used to people doing this kind of stuff or trying to pick up the pieces. But so my brother got me, and I ended up staying at my mom's house. And I would always, I'd do good, and I would run off. Do good, and then run off. And I would run back to that apartment, which apparently somebody made like dozens of keys for people going in and out of that apartment. Don't know how that happened, but
yeah, I believe that's called a trap house.
Yeah. Well, and I had a friend, she kept thinking that there was people out there watching us and everybody thought she was being paranoid. When I was staying at my mom's, my oldest daughter's dad, and I'm not saying his name because I don't think he's going to want his name on here. That's why I'm saying it that way. But he got a phone call or something from the people on the lease, because I feel like me and him never officially got on the lease because we were roommates with his friends. And so he got the phone call that apparently the FBI or whoever it is that watches that kind of stuff had been watching the house, and that we had such and such amount of time to get everything out of there, or they were going to raid it, like a whole bunch of things. Now, this is just me hearing it. I wasn't told any of this specifically, so I don't know if that's actually how it went down.
That'd be the DEA.
Yeah. So my mom, my grandma, my oldest daughter's dad, his mom, and I want to say the guy that was on the lease, they all went to that house and cleaned everything up. And apparently they found people's social security cards, like they found drugs sitting out in the kitchen, like whole 9 yards. And I ended up staying with my mom after that. And I got a job at Whiskey Bottom. And I was drinking heavily again while I was there. And I started getting, my life together at some point. My mom ended up moving in. Can't remember. I don't think she moved in with my brother yet. She was moving in with our family friend. And they would let me come over there and stay sometimes. But I ended up, going and turning myself in for my failure to appears. I got my own trailer, I was moving in there on my own. And then that's when it went downhill again. I had no desire whatsoever to be a mom to my oldest daughter. Honestly, I think a lot of it was because when I looked at her, I thought of the whole John situation. And there's some days that I still have to, I love her, but I still struggle with that bond because I missed out on so much when she was so young. But I moved into that house and I should have been focused on being a mom, and I wasn't. I was going out and partying all the time. I started letting people come stay with me, had a good roommate, and she was actually trying to get me to be a better mom. Like, we got bunk beds. She was like, your daughter can sleep up here. My niece can sleep here. And I just wasn't having it. I was being stupid. Because before her, I had another roommate that was one of my best friends at the time. Turns out she was a dirty hoe bag that, I'm not going to go down that route. I'll just say it was a dirty, messy situation. And to get back at her, I eventually stole her boyfriend. Because she left me high and dry on the rent, wouldn't let her boyfriend pay anything, and tried to take my boyfriend at the time. Whole big messy thing. So I kicked her out. Then I took her man after I kicked her out. I'm not like that anymore. I'm not that kind of person. So, this other girl came in. She was a very, very good roommate. And she was gone on vacation. And I had my other roommate that I let move in there. We were all, I relapsed on Xanax. A bad situation happened with a puppy. One of the guys.
We won't go into that one.
Yeah, we're not going to go into that one.
I have a soft spot for animals.
Yeah.
And I cannot stand animals not being treated properly. And I feel personally that anybody that hurts animals should be hurt in the exact manner in which they hurt the animal.
So we're not going to go into what happened with the dog.
Also feel the same way about people who hurt children.
Yeah. So we're not going to go into about what happened to the puppy. But all that happened that weekend, I blacked out. I came to, and I had relapsed on meth. I ended up in a fight with that girl, the one that was a really good roommate. I've gotten into a fight with her, and I became very paranoid, thinking she was going to kill me. Like, I was scared to go out of the bedroom. It's a very weird thing. Everybody kept telling me that she wasn't going to hurt me because she was gone, you know. But the only reason that she did anything was because I lunged at her like a crazy maniac because I thought that she was disrespecting the guy that I was there with.
All right, so you start on Xanax again.
Yes, and then I relapsed on meth. So
Okay,
then,
but we skipped over the initial meth introduction.
no, I said that when I was at the apartment.
Oh, okay,
And I ended up
that's
at the strip club.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Okay.
So
Hopefully you're tracking better than me. I'm writing notes, so sometimes I miss stuff while I'm writing.
So we went, all that happened. And I can't remember what got me to want to try it. I think a friend of mine that was doing meth, I went somewhere with her to get something, and there was someone there that sold heroin. And I was like, I like Xanax, but I don't like the blacking out part. I wonder if I would like this. So I just jumped straight to it. A lot of people, they start off on pills. I jumped right to it. And I started doing that. And I will go and say this, she was very adamant. She did not want me doing it. She didn't want me doing meth. She said, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to do it with you. Like, you don't need to be doing this. And I wouldn't listen. I did it anyways. And my boyfriend at the time, he didn't want me doing it. And then he found me doing it one day. He showed up at my house and I was in the middle of snorting something. And then he came in and acted like he was all mad at me. But turns out he was mad because I wasn't sharing it. But so we stayed there for a bit. She ended up pregnant. I quit working. I started stripping around the time, and I was a horrible stripper. Like, horrible. And then I did other things with doing that. And I'm not going to get into details with to make money too. And the long story short, we stayed in that house for a while, and then she ended up pregnant. I was behind on the rent because neither one of us wanted to work because we were both strung out. It was just a whole big thing. She moved into another house. Boyfriend at the time, his house had no utilities. He didn't even, he was just kind of staying at my house and then staying at his dope dealer's house. So he's like, well, you can't come stay with me. I ain't even got nowhere for you to come stay. So ended up back at the older brother's house. But I could only stay for so long because they didn't want me, like I said, they were used to my other brother. They didn't want to enable me. They didn't want me getting into their stuff because it was just a whole big thing. So I would stay there sometimes. And then I would stay at the friend's house. And then I would stay with the boyfriend at the time at his drug dealer's house. And that's when it started getting real bad because his drug dealer was obsessed with him. So because I was dating him, I got free stuff like he did. So I never had to pay for any of my drugs. And then the heroin dealer, he was obsessed with me. So he would sneak off and give me heroin and not want me to tell the other people in the house that I was getting heroin. And then your neighbor would give me heroin and meth, whatever. Mm-hmm. So, I stayed at her house for a while. And I stayed in the spare bedroom. And there's a lot of times that I don't even remember. And I started realizing, like, I went and saw my daughter. One of the times I went and saw her, and her dad had a girlfriend at the time. Not the one he's married to now. It was a different girl. And I guess she was just jealous that I stayed there. It was for his birthday. I watched Lily. And I always made certain if I was staying somewhere, I never took my drugs in the house, especially if my kid's there. Now, I did get high before I went over there, which I shouldn't have done. Taking care of my kid, I shouldn't have been high, but, you can't go back and change things. But I stayed there, and she went to school the next morning, and it was just me and the girlfriend in the house. She was still sleeping in his room, and I was sleeping in my daughter's room. And then I start getting phone calls, like, hey, you got to get out of the house. You can't be there by yourself, and, she's going to leave, blah, blah, blah. And then I ended up with I can't remember if I got a phone call or a message, but she apparently told him that she had went into the bathroom and found a broken straw and heroin residue in the bathroom. I was like, A, I don't take my stuff into people's houses. I leave it locked in my glove box. And B, I'm not going to do that where my daughter sleeps. And I don't remember what ended up coming of any of that. But so he finally was just, fed up with all of it. He's like, you either get sober or you're not going to have her in your life. And cut in with all of that, deadbeat starts popping around too.
That'd be your dad.
Yes. He had me come stay. He used his food stamps, and he got me and my boyfriend at the time food. And he came and picked me up one time because I left my card at Jessica's house.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica was one of my friends that wouldn't let me come around when I was like that neither. She realized that I was doing it and I had to leave. But I left my stuff there, so I didn't have gas. And Larry, oh God, I didn't mean to say his name. My dad, he came.
I don't give a crap if you say his name. He's a piece of crap anyway.
He came and he picked me up, and he was telling me, you can come stay with us, this and that. Little did I know it was another trap house that I hadn't showered in I don't even know how many days. And they're telling me, yeah, you can shower when you get there, blah, blah, blah. There was no hot water. So you remember how I had to, when we didn't have hot water when we moved in here, how I had to do the stovetop stuff? That's what they were telling me to do. And I was like, no, like these bathrooms are probably disgusting. I'm not taking a bath here. And then boyfriend at the time comes and picks me up. And at the time, that woman, she was trying to shoot up. She knew that I had shot up her son before. So she's like, I can't hit this vein. Will you come and do it for me? And I couldn't do it. So I was like, I can't do it. So then he comes over to pick me up. Larry's never met this man before. Maybe he met him once. But he comes in there, hey, can you come shoot her up? We can't get no veins. And he was like, no, I'm not doing that. You can probably see him saying it too. Like, no. So ended up leaving. And I think I saw Larry like one or two more times during all of that. But it was like I think it was because when I was getting ready to leave, dope dealer didn't have any food in the house. And I felt bad for her son. He wasn't going to have any food. So he was going to help me get food there. But so my daughter's dad didn't want me, around. So I had to get sober or I was going to lose her. And I decided I needed to get sober. And my dumb self, I kept trying to call the Love Lady Center, and it kept saying that they were open at 9. But every time I would call, it was 9, but I couldn't get anybody. Then I start realizing
there's 2 letters. Oops, bumped the mic. Sorry. There's 2 letters after a time. There's 3 numbers, unless you're doing military time, and then there's 4, and then there's 2 letters after that, right? Those 2 letters are very important.
Well, they didn't say it, to my defense, on the thing.
Most people.
Most people would know what time of the day, but I didn't. So I kept trying to call at 9 p.m. every night, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why can I not get in touch with somebody to try to go to this rehab. My mom ends up getting in touch with him. Surprise, no issue there.
Well, it helps when you call in the middle of the day.
Yeah. So they were going to try to get me in there, and I left the first time from the trap house and ended up over at my nanny's house. And I'm not going to say what type of family member it was. I'm just going to say there was a family member that was there, and I knew that he had a history of drugs Not my brother, by the way. I want to specify that was not my brother. It was a completely different family member.
Neither brother.
Yeah, neither one of my brothers. It was a completely different person. I knew that there was speculation that he had a drug problem because he was having issues with being very paranoid about stuff. And this is where it gets to my rock bottom, rock bottom. I went over to my nanny's house. The first night I was there, I couldn't sleep because his neighbor saw that I needed some stuff and knew I was going to be leaving. And he's like, here, you want some before you go? Sure, I'll take some. And then I go to my nanny's and it's bedtime and I'm laying in the bedroom. And John always wanted kids. And people always told me, you're lucky when he died he didn't kill you too. So I'm laying in bed and I can't sleep. And I see what? Looks like you were thinking.
Well, I don't know. It's an odd thing to say because he never really tried to kill you before. So,
well, people always say, with domestic stuff.
Well, I mean, I guess besides
homicide, suicide is what it usually ends up being when someone kills himself. So, John comes to me. I don't know. Like I was awake, but I was seeing as if I was asleep. I don't know if it was a vision, if it was a demon, if it was an angel. I don't know what the heck it was. But he comes to me and he's standing out by a tree and he says, the reason I didn't kill you when I killed myself was because I wanted to give you a chance to be a mom. Now that you're going to, and it was very specific. Now that you're going to lose your daughter, I want you to meet me at the tree. And I laid there and I took my blanket and I pulled it over I took my blanket and I pulled it over my face and I laid there until I heard my nanny in the kitchen. And I went and asked her to give me some Benadryl so I could go to sleep. I was about a week. Yeah, I hit a week sober. And that family member was needing help doing some repos. Took that as an opportunity. I could make some money. I can also get him somewhere. So I went on some repos with him. And then I told him about the dope dealer. And I wanted to go over there. I can't remember. I don't think I told him that she was a dope dealer. I just said I wanted to go hang out with a friend. Because I knew, for whatever reason, men end up liking her. So I knew that he would get manipulated by her and end up liking her. So I had him take me over there. And I got some heroin. I got some meth. He ends up doing meth. And we ended up leaving, but I ended up with my boyfriend at the time. We were out in the truck and we were getting high and stuff. And then I ended up back with my family member at his house. And it just went completely downhill from there. He starts imagining that there's people coming out of the ceilings, out of the walls. He thought that I was bringing people in there, doing stuff with them through the windows, and they were going out through the ceilings in the closet. And like he full blown kicked me out of the chair in the living room because he thought that I was lying to him. He thought the next day that it was like he was ex-military, and he was telling me that he was seeing my nanny and her sister outside with guns to their head of people trying to kill him. And around that time too, over at the dope dealer's house, he ended up calling the cops to that place because he was hallucinating that there was dead army men crawling around. I can't remember which day was what. It's all jumbled up, but it was a lot of things happening. And when he did that, when he kicked me out of the seat like that, I was just done with it. I was like, I'm not dealing with this. I left. And I can't remember if I ended up back at the dope dealer's house or if I ended up at my friend's house. But I started getting phone calls. He had called the cops to where he was at because he was seeing a girl, like a dead body, and he thought that it was me. And he had them out there looking for a dead body or something like that. And I could be wrong. It might not have been a dead body, but it was something like he was looking for somebody and he was calling me, freaking out. And I was selfish. I was just like, I'm not dealing with this. He's just being stupid. He's being crazy. And I don't know if I've told you this part, and I may have. I don't remember. But I didn't go back around him. I ended up back over at my friend's house or back at the dope dealer's house. He ended up back in my nanny's house. And they ended up finding a suicide note. He was wanting to kill himself because of all of that stuff. And that really just put me to rock bottom because John actually, they found on him later a suicide note too. It wasn't a finished note. I don't even remember what it said. It used to be my cover photo on Facebook. That's how messed up I was. But they found his note. And so that's when I was finally ready to get help. I never touched heroin again after that night. That was sometime around Thanksgiving. I can't remember the exact date, but it was around Thanksgiving in 2018. Because that night when I did it, I was projectile vomiting everywhere. I ended up at my nanny's house because I was getting some clothes and stuff. And like I was seeing double. I was yelling at her, being mean to her, like I didn't care, just saying all sorts of horrible things to her. And it's just, the whole thing's just a blur. And I never touched it again after that because it was almost like God was just making me purge it out because it was just so horrible. And they ended up getting me in at Love Lady. I got picked back up from the trap house again. And I ended up at my daughter's dad's house. And I got picked up from there by my nanny. And then I ended up from my nanny to my oldest brother's house. And my oldest brother ended up being the one that took me because my mom was having carpal tunnel surgery. And I think she also said that she wouldn't be able to handle taking me. So my oldest brother took me. He actually paid for me to go there and everything. And I relapsed on meth 6 months in. And then I went through the program. I was getting close to finishing. I think I was like a couple of more graduations were supposed to come up, and then I was supposed to graduate. Then I relapsed again. And then they made me start completely over. And they actually told Lily's dad about this time. The first time they lied to him and said that it was against the rules to like girls there. So they told him that I got in trouble for making out with a girl or something. Believed. And so
just for transparency's sake, I believe you were the one that told him that.
No, I don't think so.
They told him that.
They told him that.
Oh, okay.
They told him, and because I think he was the one that mentioned it to me or something. They told him the second time, too, what it actually was, because I full-blown, like, I tricked everybody, made everybody think that I was still at the center. I went home to go do this with this guy, get high, whole 9 yards. So it was a whole big thing, and they were just all fed up with it. So I started over again, and I think I stayed for like a month or two. And because he knew the reason, he was gearing up about the custody stuff. And I didn't want to lose custody of her. So I decided to come home. Against everybody's wishes. Nobody wanted me to come home. They didn't think I was ready. But I came home anyways. And that first night, I relapsed. And then, how far into it am I telling?
Just the addiction part.
So I don't tell, like, when I got sober?
Yeah, no. Well, that'll be the second video.
Need to wrap it up because I'm getting to
the sober part. Well, that's good.
You know what happens when I
yeah.
ended up there. So you need to tell me where you want me to stop.
Well, I think that's good there, because that brings us up to the conclusion of the addiction part, and then we're going into the recovery part after that, and the life after addiction into recovery, family stuff, relationship stuff, what it's like after an addiction and all that. So, yeah, and actually, you finished up right at an hour. So, this was supposed to be a 30-minute show, but it's an hour. So, that's fine. These are going to be however long they are. But, yeah, so that's the first episode done. Stay tuned. Next week, we will post the recovery side of it for Chris, and then it'll be my turn after that. So thank you for sharing. That is something that, and she said a few times throughout this, that, don't judge me for this, don't, judge me for that, or think bad about that. This show, this channel there isn't any judgment here, unless you hurt animals or kids. And even then, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just, never mind. Doesn't matter. But there's mean comments, judgmental comments. Eventually, we want to get to the point where the whole point of this is to help people with what we've been through and what we've experienced. So we want to tell other people's stories as well, have people on as guests. We can do that remotely. They don't have to come here or anything like that. We're set up for all of that. So, this is a non-judgmental kind of place. So if there are mean comments or judgmental comments or anything like that, they will be deleted, because there's no need for that, and there's no respect for people that want to be keyboard warriors. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. If you have a addiction story, recovery story, and you want to help people with that story, send it to us. The email is on the page, so you can email your story to us. And if you're willing to and you want to be a guest on the show, we can also work that out potentially too. So anyway, we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Again, I'm Dylan.
Chris.
And we'll see you next time. Okay, we'll do it again. I'm Dylan.
I'm Chris.
There you go. That one came through. We'll see you next time.